To begin by saying it's my pleasure to be here this evening. I first blessed the mic at IUSB Poetry Slam back in 1999. So when I found out about this event, I decided to come out. I'm semi-retired, so I came out retired because I really wanted to be a part of this event, and it's just been a blessing to be here. This particular piece is entitled An American Murder Movie. An American Murder Movie. Just recently, I watched a video. It was a video that contained footage that captured the final moments of another unarmed black man who had been shot and killed by a police officer. And naturally, I was shaken up and pained to the core when I watched that footage. And yet, I must admit that I was not shocked by anything that I saw on that video. Nor was I shocked by the subsequent words that flowed from the mouths of so many individuals who tried to rationalize, minimize, explain away, and even justify what had taken place. I wasn't shocked at all. In fact, I would best describe my emotional state of mind at that particular time as being numb and being fatigued. I was fatigued because I had grown weary of dealing with the reality that as a black man in America, I had quickly became an endangered species. And as I watched that footage, I could not help but to think to myself that more than likely the victim struggled with that same reality. In fact, if he had been raised like so many other black men in America, that means he had always been told that there would be absolutely nothing he could do if he ever came face to face with and was forced to have a heart-to-heart with a bullet that had his name written on it. But truth be told, he was never worried about the bullet that bore his namesake. However, he was always terrified by that bullet that had been inscribed, by that overly simplified and all-encompassing justification. He fit the description. He fit the description. You know that description is so generic and so wide-ranging that it applies to almost all of the black male population. The suspect was dark-skinned, maybe light, ranging in height from 5'11" to 6'7". He was slender. Or was he big bone? He had a bald dome. Or maybe it was a fade, high top or low. Come to think of it, the suspect definitely had dreads. As a matter of fact, it was hard to see his head because he wore a skull cap, which was nestled underneath his fitted hat, which was hidden underneath his hoodie. But one thing is for certain, the suspect was very strong. He was as strong as an ox, borderline biotic. And his eyes were bloodshot, no, fiery red, bordering on demonic. It was as if he was possessed. And this is normally coded language for the suspect was high on drugs. The initial report was it was meth. Then they said it was cocaine. But then they were absolutely certain that it was LSD. But then they finally admitted that it was not enough evidence to determine which drugs, if any, were in fact in the suspect's system. And when it was all said and done, those initial reports about the suspect's drug usage were found to be ludicrous and asinine. They were completely asinine. And that's putting things nicely. because the final toxicology report revealed that there were only 2 things in the suspect's system at the time of his death. And they were Skittles and iced tea. Skittles and iced tea. And yet, the authorities continued to insist that he was either high on drugs or he was possessed. Simply put, he was a black man. Nothing more and nothing less. And of course, it didn't stop with that endless list of descriptions. They also released a list of depictions of the quote-unquote suspicious behaviors that the suspect allegedly engaged in on the night in question. The suspect was last seen walking, last seen down, last seen talking. Yeah, girl, you know I can't wait to see you later on. Last seen smiling. The suspect was last seen running. Last seen laughing. Girl, you so crazy. Then that cop was last seen gunning. And that's when the suspect was last seen gasping for air. And finally, he was last seen doing something so normal and so routine, and yet apparently so obscene that it justified him being shot and killed. Peep this. Apparently, the suspect actually had the audacity to be last seen breathing. He was last seen breathing. And as for his final breath, it was last seen leaving his chest. And as for his life, it was last seen during the last scene of an all too familiar documentary about another unarmed black man being shot and killed by a police officer. A documentary that has historically been written and produced by the harsh reality that we are expendable. And when that director yelled lights, the suspect allegedly got into character. And when that director yelled camera, that police officer supposedly acted out of character. And when that director yelled action, he immediately began shooting. And when that police officer heard action, he immediately began shooting. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4. And although the suspect was no longer moving and no longer breathing, they both shot more. The director, he kept on shooting because he needed more footage. And that police officer, he kept on shooting because he had more bullets. And meanwhile, no one who witnessed this killing said a word. Not one single person uttered a sound. Why? Because apparently they had all been trained to follow one of the most important rules in film. And that is, there absolutely has to be quiet on the set while shooting is in progress. And when that director yelled cut, he had taken 10 shots, and it took him only 1 take. And meanwhile, that police officer took 1 life, and it took him 10 shots. And to make matters worse, the victim's dead body was still lying in the streets when the smear campaign began. That's when the authorities tried to make known the suspect's long past. in order to explain why his future had been cut so short. They released a report that said the suspect struggled with alcohol. And apparently this was important because he was seen earlier in the night having a few drinks with some friends. Now, I don't know if the report was released to suggest that he was an alcoholic or to imply that he was simply drunk on the night in question. But one thing became obvious. The authorities attempted to bring light to the shots he took earlier in the night in order to justify the shots he took later on. It was as if it was not simply good enough to kill his body, they also had to bury his credibility